We are in 2 Kings chapter 4. 2 Kings chapter 4. It's pretty sure safe to say that many of us, if not all of us, have used a vending machine at some point in our life. Okay? Whether it is buying a pop out of the machine, whether it is an ATM machine, which is all purposes a vending machine for cash. Okay? Vending machines are a convenient way to grab a quick snack. You need some chips, you put in your money, and you press A4 and you get it. Well, this week I saw an article on BuzzFeed titled 24 vending machines you won't believe exist. Some of them I wasn't really surprised with, like the pizza vending machine, that wasn't a surprise, all right? That was like, yeah, I could totally have seen that. I think there was a bacon vending machine too. Those did not surprise me. But there are some of them that actually surprised me. See, there is a caviar vending machine in Los Angeles. Because that is what we want, is high quality vending machine caviar. In Singapore, there is a mashed potato vending machine. There is a sprinkle cupcake vending machine in the United States. I'm like, okay, I could see that. Get to pick your frosting, you know. There's a burger vending machine in Moscow. In New York City, there is an entire vending machine restaurant. Like the wall is just pretty much just one giant vending machine. I'm pretty sure Amazon even has vending machine grocery stores now, probably. You know. And then this is the last one that was surprising. There was a canned bread vending machine in Japan. You know, I don't know. It's a comparison between Germany had like fresh heated bread vending machines. Which like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, as long as you're catching them early instead of by the end, you know, where they're dry to a crisp, but the canned bread one, I think, was the one. I mean, I don't know. You pay for convenience with a vending machine. And I think at times we in our relationship with the Lord can fall into the exact same trap as instead of spending a few extra minutes at home to make ourselves lunch, you know, we go to the vending machine because it's convenient. I think we do the same thing in our relationship with the Lord. We can treat God like a vending machine that we can just go up and ask and summon his power when we need it, and then we go about our day. We just put in, you know, urgent need, we're good to go. And what plays out in this account of Elisha, his servant Gehazi, and a Shunammite woman is not an exchange with a vending machine God, but a very, I think, a fascinating and enlightening interaction between Elisha and the Lord, and how God decided to provide his power to meet a need to the Shunammite woman. And we're going to see today is experiencing the power of God in your life requires what I call a personal investment in the problem and a healthy relationship with the one you are asking, which is the Lord. So now let's all get on the same page here. So hopefully you're at 2 Kings chapter 4. And as we read this, I want to make one very important note. We have been studying narrative passages. And at times we can fall into traps when it comes to studying accounts or narratives or stories where we can make a narrative and how to. So how do I get the power of God in my life? I just have to follow the steps that Elisha did. Ta-da! But I think we're missing the big idea. Sometimes we will read a narrative passage and we will look and we will read and we'll read and we'll read and we're like, I don't see it. It just sounds like it's an account. It just sounds like it's a story. What can I get out of it? And I will say that it took me a little while with 2 Kings chapter 4 to just sort of put it in my own mind. I'm like, okay, I can see how I can connect this with my life. Because I'm not going to encourage us to go out and start healing people who have died. Okay, I'm not. But I still think that we can, like Elisha, access the power of God in our own personal life and as we minister to others. It's going to look differently for all of us. But I just want to say this isn't a how to heal people sermon. This is a let's watch to see what Elisha does. And are there things that we can mimic and transfer into our own lives? You guys tracking with me? I'm trying to make that distinction because it is a story. How God decided to work in Elisha is different than how he worked with Elijah. I mean, Elisha, we have not seen a lot of fire from heaven yet, have we? Elijah, he was like, okay, he's just coming everywhere. So he's already working different, and he works differently with us as well. But I think we can take some principles out of it. So let's see. So we're in 2 Kings chapter 4, and we're going to start in verse 8. Verse 8. So one day, Elisha went to Shunem, where a wealthy woman lived, who urged him to eat some food. So whenever he passed that way, he would turn in there to eat food. Smart idea. If you're walking and you're hungry, and this family's like, you want some food? You know what? You're going to stop in and get some food. Elisha's doing the same thing. He would go and he'd get some food. And she said to her husband, behold, now I know that this is a holy man of God who is continually passing our way. And so Elisha, as he does his rounds, as he's ministering for the Lord, he was walking by, and this lady's like, hey, I know, so that's what she's recognizing. This is a set apart man of God. So she recognizes that God is with Elisha. She's like, let's make a small room for him on the roof with walls and put there for him a bed, a table, and a chair, and a lamp. So whenever he comes to us, he can go in there. She's like, we have the room. Let's just give him one. So as he's passing by and ministering and doing his thing, you know, we can minister to him. And so they did. And one day he came in there and he turned into the chamber and rested there. And he said to Gehazi the servant, he said to Gehazi his servant, call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And when he said to him, say now to her, see, you have taken all this trouble for us. What is it to be done for you? Would you have a word spoken on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army? And she answered, I dwell among my own people. And he said, what then is to be done for her? And so there's this thing. So Elisha is trying to reward her hospitality. Can I put a good word in for the king? Can I put in a good word for the commander? You know, help business out a little bit? Is there something I can do to say thank you for giving me, you know, part of your home when I need it? And she's like, I'm fine. So Elisha's like, man, what am I going to do here? So he turns to his servant, okay? And Gehazi answered, well, she has no son and her husband is old. And so, in essence, there is no way for their family line stops with them. And as all of us, I think all of us in some way would like to pass on the essence of who we are. We'd like to pass on our inheritance and what we've worked to our children so they can take and then pass it on to somebody else. That is a general thought of humanity, is to pass themselves on in some fashion with their children. And so he's like, hey, she has no kids. And husband's old. They're not having any kids. Doesn't sound like a good idea. And so when he called her, she stood in the doorway, and he said, at this season, about this time next year, you shall embrace a son. I get the interaction with here as sort of comical, you know? Because you can just imagine, you have, you know, Elisha, and goes up, and she probably went up and said, hey, do you have everything you need? You have oil in your lamp. Are you good? And he's like, I have to tell you something. You're going to have a kid next year. Do you laugh? You see how she responded? This is so human. That's why I love the Bible, because I think when we slow down, we actually pick up the comedy, I think, and then the reaction. She's like, oh, no, my Lord. Oh, man of God, don't lie to me. She literally just said, "Oh, man of God, stop lying to me." But she conceived. And she bore a son about that time the following spring, just as Elijah had said to her. Oh, you can just bet every time he came by while she was pregnant, you just bet he heard it. This is your fault. It wasn't no, this is your fault, Elisha. The husband's like, yeah, and she's just like, man, both of you, come on. So she had a son. And that's where we're sitting right now. But when the child had grown, here in verse 18, he went out one day to his father among the reapers. And so his dad is out there in the field. And he said to his father, my head, my head. And the father said to his servants, carry him to his mother. And when he had lifted him and he brought him to his mother, the child sat on her lap till noon, and he died. We're talking hours from him walking out, a perfectly fine, healthy young man, probably young boy, went out, started complaining about his head, couldn't make it back, and by noon that day he had died. Now, as a parent who has lost a child, this wasn't my child has cancer, we've walked that battle. This is a out of nowhere, sudden, everything was just fine this morning. We had breakfast, he was okay. And by lunchtime, he's dead. And I've looked, and there's some ideas to what he could have had. They said it's possible that he had sunstroke of some kind and maybe was a little more receptive to it, because that actually leads with like a huge headache, and maybe he passed that way. They also thought it could be cerebral malaria, which really shows no signs, but it's fast hitting and also hits people in the head. We don't really know. The Bible didn't think it was important to let us know. It was just, he died that fast. So, she went up, verse 21, and laid him on the bed of the man of God and shut the door behind him and went out. And when I read this, I almost get the sense of, especially what plays out next, you almost get the sense of like quiet purpose. It doesn't say she mourned. It doesn't say anything like that. She took the boy, and I don't think there's any special significance with bringing the child up to. It was an available bed. Goes up, sets the child there. And then she called to her husband and said, send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys that I may quickly go to the man of God and come back again. There's no information that she even told the husband what's going on. He's been out in the field. Dad, if you don't know, well, he's just, he'll be okay, right? If our kid has a headache, we're pretty sure we'll see them, in a few hours, correct? You don't even think about it. Send me one of the servants to get one of the donkeys that I may quickly go to the man of God and come back again. She's like, I have business. Give me one of your servants. We're going to head on up. And he said, why will you go to him today? He has no idea. It is neither the new moon nor the Sabbath. And so it's not even a special holiday. I don't understand. There's nothing significant about going up. That's why I don't think he has any idea of what's played out. And she said, all is well. So that's why I just get this sense that she had something that she was going to do, and she kept it together and composed. She tells her husband everything is fine. And she saddled the donkey. She said to her servant, urge the animal on. Do not slacken the pace for me unless I tell you. Let's ride. And So she set out and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. And then the man of God saw her coming. I mean, he's up on the hill, saw her coming. And he said to his servant, look, there's the Shunammite. Run at once to meet her and say to her, is all well with you? So sort of meet her halfway, make sure everything is okay. And so it is all well with you and your husband. So Elisha is curious, like, okay, is everything okay? Is everything all right? And is everything well with your child? So Elisha has a personal contact with her. Is everything okay with you? Is everything okay with your husband? Is everything okay with your child? And when she came to the mountain and when she came to the mountain to the man of God, wait, no, I'm skipped ahead. All is well. Okay. Oh yeah, okay. So I'm in the right place. Sorry. All right, but and when she came to the mountain to the man of God, she caught hold of his feet. And that is where you get the sense that something is not right here. You almost get that she's been completely put together and composed. But as she gets closer, as soon as she sees Elisha and is within grasping range, she grabbed a hold of him. And Gehazi came to push her away. It's thought that Gehazi was trying to protect the master from needy people. Because you can imagine someone who is well known as a healer or someone who God is doing stuff with, you want sort of a shield at times or you'll never be able to sleep. So it's possible Gehazi was doing that. I just want to put this in the back of our minds here because we are actually going to spend a sermon on Gehazi. Gehazi's never looked at positively in Scripture. And I think even some Hebrew scholars think that he forcibly grabbed this woman, trying to get her off. There's just the sense that it was a little more forceful. And then it's not that we're dying, but trying to grab her and rip her off of Elisha. And he said to Gehazi, leave her alone, for she is in bitter distress. What are you doing? Don't grab her. Look at her. And the Lord has hidden it from me, and has not told me. So Elisha's like, I had no idea that something was wrong here. You can tell this woman, and like I said, he stops there regularly. You know he has a special connection with the family and with the son, and here she is. And she says in verse 28, did I ask you for a son? You see that? Did I ask my Lord for a son? Did I not say, do not deceive me? As in, why? I didn't ask for a kid. I was perfectly fine without a kid. I didn't need a kid to make me happy. I was completely content in my place in life, which is a huge statement because as we see in other places in the Bible, having a kid was a huge burden for people. It was just this giant thing where they would pray and pray and pray for years and years and years and years. And she was like, I was completely content with not having a kid. I didn't ask you for this. And I said, don't lie. And what she means by that is, I didn't ask. You said I was going to have one. Why would you give me a kid just to have my kid die suddenly? She's like, how does that make any sense? I mean, it's your fault. This shouldn't have happened. And she is frustrated. And she is, I think, mad. She's upset. She's like, shame on you, Elisha, for doing this to me. Because children have this way of melting their parents' hearts. Am I right? They can throw up on you and you're like, that was so cute. They just have this way. And even the most hardened, battle-hardened military guys, you put them around a little kid and they just go, oh. My daughters have this way. Back in Colorado, my dad and myself would have military friends. They walk around, you know. And one of those guys you never want to get in a fight with a bar. And my daughters would go right up to them and have like no fear. And their whole persona is like, yeah, oh, hi. I mean, just They just melt your heart. And you know, for a mom, she fell in love with this son. Because sons do that to their moms. We're good at it. And she's like, why did you do this to me? And now that we've got all this stuff, so here's the problem. Here's the thing. And so how does God allow his power to be used to answer the cry and the plea of the Shunammite woman? Here we go. Let's look at verse 29. And he said to Gehazi, tie up your garment and take my staff in your hand and go. If you meet anyone, do not greet him. And if anyone greets you, do not reply. So literally, you get there, you don't talk to anybody, you don't be polite, you go as fast as you can. All right? And if anyone, and lay my staff on the face of the child. And I think that's, people are like, well, what does he mean? What does he mean? Pretty much everybody believes that I have been able to see that idea, that was supposed to heal the child. That's why he sent it. He sent his younger guy, run, heal the son, now. And so he handed off the icon of a prophet's power. You know, Moses had his staff. The staff was a significant part. Here, take this, go, heal. Dun, 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 taking off down the hill. That's what's carrying on. But then what plays out here, he says, then the mother of the child said, as the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going with him. I'm staying with you until we figure out what's going on here, till this problem is fixed. And so he arose and followed her. And Gehazi went on ahead and laid the staff on the face of the child, but there was no sound or sign of life. And therefore he returned to meet him and told him the child has not awakened. And that's why we think that the idea was the child was supposed to awake. But there was nothing. And I think this is our first point here, is our first observation is that Elisha could not use God's power because he wasn't personally invested in this thing. He gives his staff to someone else who we've already seen has no connection whatsoever with this lady. There'd be no reason to grab her, pull her off. There'd be not. You don't do that to a friend. If some friend, like if Leslie comes up and gives me a hug, Alec is not going to walk up and say, get off of him. Right? No, because he's like, they got a connection. I mean, maybe if he was strangling me, he would stop, but no, you could just tell. There was no reason. There's no connection with Gehazi and this family at all. And so Elisha had not personally invested in this situation. We'll see how this plays out. And it didn't go. What also we see, here's an observation, is that gimmicks do not work. See, magic staff, Power Rangers, magic wand, make my monster grow. For some of you who lived during that age, there was no significance with this. Yeah, so what? You got a staff. Boop. Nothing. Yep, you probably knocked out the kid, okay? There's nothing there. All right? Now, the child as the Lord lives, as you, okay. And therefore he returned to meet him and told him the child has not awakened. And so when Elisha came into the house, he saw the child lying dead on his bed. And he went in and shut the door behind the two of them and prayed to the Lord. And then he went up and lay on the child, putting his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hands. And as he stretched himself upon him, the flesh of the child became warm. Now this is really weird. Can we all just say that? Okay, this is weird. All right? What is the significance with this? And I think we're seeing there is a difference between I will have this guy bring a stick and a staff to raise the kid. Elisha now is demonstrating I am identifying with this boy. As he is here, I am here with him. I am identifying myself with him. I think there was an idea of a personal investment. There's a connection here. Where Elisha's like, I know this boy. I'm pleading, God, that this is him. As you think of me, think of the boy. Are you tracking with me? God, as you see me, as a holy man of God, as your chosen prophet, I want you to bring that same identification to this boy. I'm connecting myself with him. So I've been able to see this connection. I am identifying myself with him. So God, please do something. Elisha was getting himself personally involved in the problem. And then, as you know, as we'll see in a minute, he closed the door. He begins to pray and pray and pray, and he gets himself in there with what is happening. Now, a way to think about this is, Facebook and other social media apps, they give you this ability to like or share something, right? Okay? And it allows you to like a cause, or to share a cause. So like if you feel like this social issue is wrong. Yes, I like that. All right? Or share if you support such and such. Yes, share. But how often does your like or your share lead you to get involved in that thing you've liked or shared? Like 0.0000001%. And I use this as an example because the state of New York recently changed its laws in regards to abortion, and I don't like it, okay? And you'll see a whole bunch of posts that are similar to this, like some weep because the aborted never got to live. Truth is they did live, and then they were murdered, and that's a quote by R.C. Sproul, which is completely right. But if the majority of my friends are Christians who share the exact same viewpoint as me, what have I just done? Absolutely nothing to this cause. I've shared a viewpoint that everybody else has shared that I happen to be friends with. Because the majority of the people who do share stuff that I completely agree with, if we just share and like, and yet we never volunteer to go to crisis center, we are not involved in counseling, and we're not involved in the lives of people who do and who do happen to have more abortions than other populations, what are we just doing? We're literally disconnecting ourselves from this problem and acting like it's a big deal until tomorrow when some other social issue happens to be the big topic. It's a disconnect from it. Because you will have more power to stop abortions if you are involved in men and women's lives and helping them when these things do happen. And talking with them and being there with them and loving on them and sharing and being a part of it. That's when you stop abortions. Or we stop voting for politicians who keep saying they're going to stop abortion and they don't. We act like it's a big deal. But if we're not connected with it, invested in it, involved in it, we're doing nothing. And so here's Elisha. He stopped disconnecting himself from this. And he's getting himself personally involved and personally identified with this boy. God, save this boy. And so instead of pulling a Gehazi and just throwing a quick prayer up for someone who asks you, I want you to consider personally investing in their situation. This is going to limit how many things you can do, because it's a lot easier to like and share 100 social causes on Facebook than it is to be involved in one of them on a regular weekly basis, right? Yeah. So that's what we had to do. There has to be a personal investment in the problem as we ask, because Elisha's like, I'm as identified with this boy as you can. I am smothering him. I am with him. I am a part of him. God, heal him. Now let's see what happens next here in verse 30. As next goes, then he got up again. Okay, in verse 35. So then he got up again and walked once back and forth in the house and went up and stretched himself on again. And then this child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. I don't think this was a achoo, 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 achoo. Whatever. I don't think it was. I think this was slow. I think the body's warm. There's a sign of hope. And Elisha's going back and forth, and he's praying. And he's praying, and he's asking. And it's not happening quickly, but it's slowly, and there's hope. And I think this is our second point. See, Elisha got to be part of the power of God because he was asking for it. He was asking. He was praying. It says in verse 33, and prayed to the Lord. He was telling God the problems, and he closed the door and he did it again. This was behind the scenes. He's praying and pleading, God, heal this boy. So not only was he personally invested in it, but you have to ask God to use it. Now, assumptions are an incredibly dangerous things in relationships. Okay? We assume our spouse knows what we are thinking and feeling. We think they should know or not know. And so we don't say anything. But as all of you know, when you assume something about somebody else, it's usually wrong, isn't it? And then people usually get mad. Then there's tension there. And nothing happens. And so I say this because I think at times we assume things about the Lord. We think God knows everything, which is accurate. But this isn't how a relationship with the Lord works. God isn't going to answer a request for us if we haven't asked him to answer the request. And I think at times when you're going through your struggles in life, we're like, God sees it, he'll just answer it. Yeah, he might. And answer it by saying, I'm just going to wait till you ask me to help. And when we finally start asking the Lord for help, not vending machine style, answer my request, period. He didn't answer. I guess he hates me, doesn't love me. We make this thing. No. How about we just pleading? We identify, God, I need your power. I need you to help me. I need you to show me what to do. God, I am serving here. I'm serving this family in need, and I know they need help. And I'm doing my part. I've invested what I can. God, help. Answer, show yourself. Work in a special way, God, for the family or the situation that I am personally involved with. We have to ask him personally to help. We have to ask. We can't assume. And so this means we have to pray more. I think that's what we got to do. We got to pray. We got to be praying regularly. Stop assuming that God knows. Yes, he knows. But tell him. Plead with him. Beg him. Pray as we're getting identified with a problem. Then he summoned Gehazi and said, call the lady, call the Shunammite. And so he called her, and when she came to him, he said, pick up your son. And she came and fell at his feet, bowing to the ground, and then she picked up her son and went out. And I think there's just this identity of thank you. Thank you. Elisha is like, I recognize that God used you in the life of my son. And I think that'd be really cool. There's something really neat and really special being involved in a couple's life or being involved in someone's life, and you two have prayed together for a certain thing, and both of you are walking and you're encouraging that person, and you're invested, in the situation, and you're like, you both play. And when God answers the request, man, it is so fun to be a part of that. It is so exciting when they call you on the phone and they said, guess what? This happened. And you're not like, praise the Lord. However monks hold their hands, okay? We're talking like, yes! God answered it. And it's because we were involved. We were there. We were sort of the vessel that God used in their life in some way, even if it's just prayer. Now, as we so we've seen these two principles to get involved, as Elisha does, and we see this other thing that he's praying and asking. But I want to take one more step back, I guess, from this. And Spurgeon, he's a pretty famous preacher from the past, said this in regards to Elisha. He says, and this is what he's commenting in regards to Elisha identifying himself with him. It says, the prophet's mode of operation, when he lay upon the child and put his mouth upon the boy's mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands, is full of destruction. He says, spiritual life is the gift of God. But if the dead are to be raised by our means, we must enter into hearty sympathy with them. We must create spiritual contact and become, in a great measure, identified with those whom we would bless. The Holy Spirit works by those who feel that they would lay down their own life for the good of others and would impart to them not only their goods and their instructions, but themselves also, if by any means they might save some. Oh, for more Elishas, for then we would see more sinners raised from their death in sin. And I think our responsibility as Christians, as we would all identify with, is to share the good news of Jesus to a world that is lost and dying in their sins. We would all openly say yes. And according to Paul in his letter to the Ephesians, in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 1, we were all dead in our trespasses and sins. And we weren't just lost. I want to keep emphasizing this. We aren't lost with the ability to be able to find our way out. But we were trapped and we were dead. And we were just like this boy who was dead and lost. And at some point, just like with that boy, at some point, someone invested their life into you and connected with you and shared the good news of Jesus Christ with you. There are very few times where someone's like, I never heard the gospel. I heard it from this random stranger. I believed wholeheartedly, and now I'm a Christian. Exceptions happen, but the majority of us here, someone shared the gospel with us, who we valued, who we trusted, and who we listened to. Whether it was a parent or a friend, or there's a previous pastor, we had to identify with them. And I think this is cool because we're like, I want to see God work, God work in my life. I want to see his power. I want to be used by God. And I think if we all consider ourselves Elishas, and I think that's cool because if we're considering ourselves Elishas, that means the people we come into contact with are just like the boy. They are dead in their sins. And we can connect with them. We can invest our lives in them, and we can share the hope of Jesus with them. And then I said this in our community group last 2 weeks ago. Anytime someone accepts Jesus Christ as their Savior is the most obvious, amazing proclamation that God is still doing miracles today. Because to save someone from their sins requires a divine spiritual act that no human ever can accomplish in the life of somebody. And so when you see someone, and this is what's fun about church, as we're walking around, every single one of us, if we have placed our faith and trust in Jesus Christ, is a walking decoration of a spiritually dead boy that was brought to life by someone else. Isn't that really neat? And I think this is a great reminder for us. We can have the same impact that Elisha had on this boy and family. We can have that same impact to those in our own community. If we get out and invest and love on them, and as Elisha identified with the boy, we do, and we share the hope of Jesus Christ with them. And if we not, then I think what ends up happening is we become like Gehazi, who throw vain prayers up into the thing, and we have no spirit, nothing happens. And I'd rather us be Elishas than Gehazi.